Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is Eyeshadow Palette Month, and today we're going to be ranking all of my rosy, mauve sort of color stories. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This is another video in Eyeshadow Palette Month. We are still going strong, and I thought I could rank all of the eyeshadow palettes that I've already reviewed in my makeup collection according to their color stories, and that we can determine together like which one is the best one, because everybody always wants to know. So today we're doing the rosy mauve tones. Before we get into the video, it may be good to know who I am, just in case you're new here. My name is Micah. I have been a content creator for more than a decade. I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and I really enjoy talking about eyeshadow palettes. So if that's something that you would like to see more of, then I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. So today's ranking is going to include 36, 37 eyeshadow palettes, something along those lines. All of them rosy tones. And I thought that I didn't have that many rosy toned eyeshadows until I started to pull them from my drawers and I started to categorize all of the different palettes that I have in my makeup collection. This is still one of the smaller categories, you could say. But yeah, 36, 37, like over 30 palettes in this category, I think is quite steep. I think my favorites are not going to be a surprise to those people who have been watching me for a while. And in case you want to see close-up swatches, looks that I've done with these palettes, I have reviews up for all of these. So we'll be linking you to a lot of those other videos in the description box down below. So definitely check it out if you want to see more about these palettes. So yes, we're doing 36 and I want to go through this quickly. Number 36 and 35 are things I tried this year. I just thought I'd give Eveline Cosmetics a whirl. Eveline Cosmetics is a Polish drugstore brand, and I know I very often rank some of the more affordable things in the lower end of these rankings, but that's not because they're bad quality. These are decent quality. It's just that the color stories didn't really excite me at all. So if you want exciting color stories, I don't think the drugstore is necessarily the place to be, you could say. The Twilight palette is pretty okay. It has definitely more of like a rosy tone, some purples in there. It's a bit more warm tone leaning. Packaging is super cheap on these. They were really affordable too. But then we have the Essential Rose, which is perhaps the most rosy toned of the two. This is very similar of the Naked 3. So when I was using this, I was like, yep, this is very much Naked 3 vibes. So for me, this palette wasn't anything unique in my collection, therefore it didn't wow me, and that's why both of these are ranked this low. Number 34, this guy. Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2. This is still sitting in a drawer somewhere. I don't actively use this anymore because I really don't like the formula of this. Love the color story though. That's why I want to keep it around. This was an expensive palette. I definitely want to get some more use out of it, and if I just keep it around for content reasons, I'm happy. But the issue I have, especially with this palette, is the shimmers in the top half. The mattes in here are outstanding. Some of the best mattes I've ever worked with. Really, really beautiful. But the shimmers are really difficult to use with brushes. And I need with the amount of lid space I have, if I apply a shimmer with a finger, it doesn't always look the best. So I definitely do enjoy this palette. I think it's a beautiful one. I can definitely see why so many people love Patrick Ta. I think this little flap is ingenious to keep the cream separated from the powders. Love that too. This has so much going for it, and I really wish I loved this more than I did. It's just that when I was using it, I just wasn't really a fan of how it worked for me. However, I do still think this is a good one, and I can definitely see merit in this in terms of like having a good rosy toned go-to color story in your makeup collection. Number 33 is the Catrice Vintage Soul. One that I found difficult to categorize because in my brain it's more of a neutral palette, but then I looked at it and was like, that's quite rosy toned. Like all of these shades, this, like, so it's like half rosy, half cool tone neutral. It's like, how should I categorize it? I was like, I'll throw it into this video because I've got plenty of cool tones. And this is good. This was nice. The Pro Slim palettes from Catrice were some that had some really interesting color stories and good quality, and then there were some that weren't that good. This was one of the good ones. This is the only one that has survived into my active makeup collection, and I have all the palettes that they ever released in this range. So yeah, this was lovely. I really enjoy it. This just goes to show that Catrice can do good eyeshadow if they put their minds to it. And then number 32 is going to be this one from Clio. This is the Picnic by the Sunset, and this is one of their pro palettes. Really pretty, very soft, rosy tones. It has some shimmers, 3 to be precise, 2 of them quite chunky. So this is one of the first K-Beauty palettes I've tried, and I have just found so many other K-Beauty palettes that I prefer over this. The main reason why this is ranked pretty low isn't because I don't like the Clio formula. I do really enjoy it, but K-Beauty already gives you a wash of color to begin with. That's the entire aesthetic, and this, because it is quite light, kind of disappears, which it can be a look, it can be really pretty, especially if you're like someone who's busy and you just want to slap something on. This can be really nice, but I want just a little bit more contrast out of my palette, so that's why this one is ranked quite low. And finally, the ColourPop Ménage à Moi, and I have rearranged my Ménage à Moi. I have no recollection anymore of what this used to look like, but I turned it into a warmer mauve rose sort of champagne leaning palette at the time. I had 4 of these pinky rosy palettes from ColourPop, Ménage à Moi, Flutterby, Blush, Crush, and Making Mauves. And I took all of the shades out of those 4 palettes and rearranged it. I even repressed some shadows from other palettes to put into this palette. So this deep dark thing is, I believe, from a Jaclyn Hill palette, or maybe Juvia's Place even. Like it came from somewhere, I know that much. So this is beautiful. I really like the look of it. If I want to go for that softer, rosy toned look, I reach for this one a lot. I have a video up on the channel where I rearranged all of my ColourPop palettes, so I will link that in the description box down below. But yeah, Ménage à Moi originally wasn't very exciting for me. I think it even had a pressed glitter in, if I remember correctly. That was never my favorite to begin with. So yeah, Ménage à Moi by itself was a bit boring, but now that I've rearranged it, I like it a bit better. But I definitely think the Making Mauves that I made at the time is still my favorite over this. And now we're into top 30. We're going from number 30 to number 21. And number 30, I have this guy. Again, one I didn't really know where to put because I could have put this in one of my colorful categories as well. But this is the Venus 3 from Lime Crime. And to me, because it has these shades and also this and this, it kind of reads like a rosy tone palette with a pop of purple. And I think rosy tones with a pop of purple can be really, really pretty. This is a lovely formula. I just think that I have other palettes that can do something similarly in this entire range that I just like a little bit better than I do this. Is this something I want to declutter? No, I put my hard-earned money towards this. That goes for a lot of palettes in my collection, actually. And because I do enjoy this color story from time to time, especially in the springtime, it definitely gets to stay, but it's not a standout in my collection anymore. A palette I really like the concept of, but in usage, I thought it was a little bit cumbersome, is number 29. This is the Kaja Bento Box in Rose Water. And I really adore this idea of like the 3 shades. This looks like it's cracking, but it's not. So it has 3 really nice high shine shimmers in this really pretty rosy pink vibe. Love the shimmer quality of this, but opening up every single pan separately just to go into that is incredibly cumbersome. This, together with the Clio palette I just showed you, is chef's kiss, but I am of the opinion that I need to be able to use a palette without anything having to be pulled in for it to work. So that's why this is ranked a little bit lower, even though I think this is very innovative and it's definitely a cool idea. But when I was using this, I was like, I like the idea better than I do the actual palette. Then we have the Violette Vespertine. Viseart is one of my favorite brands, you know that about me. I have a bunch of their palettes and I was super excited to see them release something like this, and also the Cashmere Charmeuse late last year, and I tried them and I just felt these were a little bit mid-tone heavy. So for me, this wasn't quite right. It just, with my fair skin, this just isn't enough to really make it work. Everything ended up looking the same and kind of muddying up together, which is a shame because I love the Viseart formula. This was still like one of my favorites of the two. Like the Charmeuse I liked as well, but this one had a little bit more to offer, but it is slightly on the warmer tone side. And I wish this had a just slightly more shimmers than it actually did. So Violet Vespertine is really pretty, and it's a lot prettier than I had anticipated just looking at the swatches, and I kind of bought it because I love Viseart and I wanted to try it. But I was a little bit disappointed with this, and that's why it's not ranked any higher. Then we have a Pat McGrath quad. This is one of the Celestial Divinity look squad. This was limited edition for Christmas one year, and I bought all three. This is Fleur Fantasia, or Fantasia. And this is like really soft, rosy pinks with a pop of lavender and a gold. Not really my color story. It's why I almost decluttered it a couple of years ago. But because it's Pat McGrath, I couldn't get myself to do it. I couldn't bite the bullet on it. And I was really happy in the end that I didn't, because these are really good quality and I do really enjoy the formula. So that's why it is ranked this low, because it's just not something I reach for a lot. And I almost decluttered it. So whether this still has a rite of passage in my makeup collection is something I should really, really reflect on. Then the Tartelette Energy. This is the final Tartelette palette I tried. And I've said that this is going to be my final one unless they do like a really good cool toned color story, because a lot of the Tartelette palettes are very warm toned. This, I was unsure where to put it because I could have put it with my warm toned ranking, but I think because of these like pinky purples that it has in this half of the palette, I think of this as like a pinky purple palette. So pinky purple palettes needed to go into this video, so that's why this is here. Again, like with Viseart, the Tarte formula is one of my favorites. I think this is an excellent eyeshadow formula, which is why I kept buying these. It's just that this color story is a little bit lacking for me, and therefore it is ranked here. One that I should just use more often is the Millennial Pinks from Melt Cosmetics, because as far as a rosy pink toned palette goes, this is really, really pretty. This shade keeps crumbling on me because it already came cracked upon arrival when I got this in, but this is so beautiful. It has all the pink tones that I could possibly want. And I know exactly why I'm not reaching for this more often than I actually do. And that's not because I don't like the formula. Again, Melt is one of my favorites. I really enjoy their palettes. It's just that this level of pink is a bit pink for me. So that's why I don't tend to reach for this a whole lot. One of the few mini palettes from Juvia's Place I've kept around. I've decluttered all the other ones, is the Mauves palette. And the reason why this got to stay was this like duochrome thing in the middle right here. But it does have some really lovely mauve tones. This is really, really stunning. It has some really lovely quality as well. Did I need a monochromatic mauve tone palette though? I don't think so. So that's why this is a bit limiting in my collection. It's not as versatile as I'd like it to be, and that's why it's ranked here. The Precious palette from Zoeva is similar to the Juvia's Place, not only because it is a 6-span, but also because it is limited in what it can do. It is a little bit more warm tone, but it has those like rosy things and then these like purpley mauve tone things. Really stunning formula. Again, Zoeva is one of my favorites in terms of color stories and formula very often. But this one was a bit hit and miss for me. Again, when I nearly decluttered, and then I had to pull it out because like I cannot get rid of this just yet. And this one, I think I put it on a going back to pile. Number 21, because we're almost there in the top 20. This is the Roman Better Than palette. This is, what's it called again? Peony Nude Garden. And this, like the Clio, is just a touch too light for me. It is really pretty. I love the neutrals we get in here, and then you get those pink tones. But what I mainly wanted from this palette was just more shimmers. If this had one more shimmer, I would have liked it so much better. And if it went a little bit deeper on this as well, then I would have liked it just a touch more, which is why some of my other Roman palettes are going to come up in the top 20 or in the top 10. And finally, the other Pat McGrath palette that was from that same collection as the other one I just showed you. So this is another one of the Look Squads. This is Risque Rose. And I like this a little bit better than I do Fleur Fantasia, mainly because the undertones in this are just a little bit more there. Like these colors just are a little bit more contrasting. Really like the bright pink. This is really pretty. And I love that we get this like purpley thing, and then this brown has a hint of like that rose tone in it as well. So as far as a rosy tone palette goes, I think this is really pretty. And that brings me to the top 20 right now. So we're going from numbers 20 to 11. And in the number 20 spot, we have Midsummer. This is also by Viseart. The reason why this is ranked not super duper high is because this doesn't have a lot of shimmers. I really like this one. This is a really, really pretty shimmer. This is a shimmer as well, but everything else is matte here. But in terms of like a really good rosy tone palette, this is perhaps one of the truest rosy tone palettes I have in my entire collection, which is why I still really enjoy it. It's just not quite perfect in terms of the different textures we're getting. The other rosy tone palette from Tarte is the Juicy palette. Another one where I was like, should I put this with my warm tone palette? Should I put it here? And I decided to put it here because essentially I feel that this entire top row makes it perfect for this video. And also here, even though it's like warm tones, it is warmer rosy tones. That's at least the way it reads to me and how it reads on my skin. And I think this is excellent. Again, I have nothing against the Tarte formula. I think it's really lovely. This was just a little bit too warm toned. And when pinks get a little bit too warm toned for me, they can give me the look of having a pink eye, which is just not really a good look for anyone. So also not for me. So that's why the Tarte Juicy isn't ranked any higher, but I do really think this is a good formula. Then we have the Clio Over the Path. And here we have one of those color stories where I'm like, yes, we're getting a bit more contrast. The reason why this is not ranked any higher is because these two shades were a little bit lacking. So they didn't really do what I thought they were going to be. They were a little bit more like a topper. So while really pretty and pairing really well with these other shades, I wish that these were actually the grungy shimmers that they look like. They're not. But yeah, Clio is a really lovely K-beauty formula. If you like that wash of color, but you still want a little bit of drama, then the Over the Path is a nice one to look into. Then one where I'm like, should I keep this around in my next declutter? Because I have decluttered pretty much all of my Lorac palettes since then. This is the Lorac Pro 4, and it's the only one left in my active makeup collection. And this is the rosy toned one. And I have to say, I use it again because it was pretty much on the chopping block last spring. And I used it again and I was like, oh, but it's really pretty, especially because it has these like cooler shimmers. And that's what's really the main selling point here. I also really enjoy Rosebud, but you also get some warm things in here. So it has a really nice balance between cooler and warmer rosy tones. And that's why what I enjoy about the palette. But this, and I think it's the purple background, just looks really, really bland to me, which is why it's never top of mind, and that's why it's ranked here. And then this is number 16. This is my ColourPop Making Mauves. I already mentioned rearranging this when I talked about the Ménage à Moi. So this is not what the original Making Mauves looks like. However, I remember keeping a lot of the shades that are originally in this palette. So I believe like these three shimmers in the middle are from the original Making Mauves. I believe this and this are from the original Making Mauves. So essentially, this is really close to what the original looked like. And this, till this day, is one of my favorite palettes in my collection. I really think it is a lovely formula. ColourPop can do some really good eyeshadow, but their color stories can be a little bit repetitive. And especially if you have a few of their palettes, that's something I just found out from rearranging them so often. You get a million light blending shades, which you don't need. So therefore, this is now a little bit better for me, and I really enjoyed this color story for sure, which is why it's ranked here. Time for the top 15. We have the Romand Better Than palette in Cheeky Cheeky Garden, and this is essentially what I felt I wanted the Nude Peony Garden to be. This just has, it is a little bit more cool toned, especially in the top row, and then you get those neutrals. It only has one true shimmer. That's the reason why it's not any higher up on the list, but it's so nice from light to dark. It just has really good, just a really good gradient to it, which is what I enjoy. So this gives you the wash of color, but you can deepen it up and add a little bit more glamour if you like. And that's what I enjoy about this one. So Cheeky Cheeky Garden is one I only tried this year, but it is already pretty high up on the list. Next up is the Natasha Denona Mini Love. This is a great rosy toned color story, and a part of me is still a little bit sad that I never got the bigger palette of this. However, I knew that this like pinky purple palette was not going to be my vibe, and having the small version definitely tickles the itch, especially because there are some warm tones in here again. It is the Natasha Denona that I know I love because I love the Natasha Denona formula, so I cannot fault it for that. But color story wise, I can have issues with Natasha Denona. So this little 5-pan is really nice, but it's not something I reach for all the time. And when I was going through everything, I was like, yeah, Lila Deux is much more like rosy toned than the Lila One is. So Viseart's Lila Deux has to go into this video, I felt. So here we have like rosy, plummy shades, I feel. This is a little bit weirdly warm toned, which again, I thought that is why it's not in a top 10, even though I love these little petit four quads that they do. I think they're excellent, and they are great companions to some of the larger Viseart palettes if you have them, because you can pretty much like rearrange your Viseart palettes if you'd like to. It's something I've never done myself, but you can very easily take the shades out and rearrange it. So you, for travel, etc., you can just make your perfect quad and take that with you. Now this next one, I really didn't know where to put it. Is this a rosy tone palette? Is this a neutral palette with a pop of color? Or is this a colorful palette? I feel this could have been featured in 3 different videos. So that's why number 12, the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde is here, because it does have these 6 really nice rosy tone shades, but I feel that these peachy tones go with it really well. Here we get some more like purpley things, so to me it goes. To me it goes. Like these are the only shades that don't really go. The rest of it is quite rosy toned. And really lovely at that. The Huda Beauty larger palettes are some of my favorites. We all know that by now. They are some of my go-tos. I know this was discontinued, but I still really enjoy the Mercury Retrograde for sure. And finally, just outside of the top 10, and I kind of surprised myself with this one because for years, the Millennial Pinks was like in this spot. But if I want to go for the warmer rosy tone, I want to commit. So Gemini 2, which I didn't buy myself because I was like, I will never use that color story. But then a friend of mine gifted it to me and I was like, yes, this is really lovely. And I especially like these. I like the grungy greens as well. But for the rosy tones, I do think it gives you pretty much every rosy toned, warmer rose tones you could ever want in your lifetime. So Gemini 2 is in the number 11 spot for that reason. Meaning we have come to the top 10, and that means we're getting to my ultimate favorites. Now remember what I said, I don't want to knock drugstore down because in my top 10 I always have some drugstore, and my number 10 in this rosy toned ranking is this one from MUA. This is Desert Bloom, and this is a really pretty, slightly neutral, warm leaning rosy tone palette. I picked it up earlier in the year when I was at Superdrug. These retail for like what, £2.99, £3.99 in the UK drugstore. Super affordable. I can also find them online through Notino here in the EU, so you can get it from other places if you don't live in the UK. Not sure what the availability is like internationally, but this is such a stunning formula. Really nice blendable mattes, incredible shimmers, and so easy to use. And affordable, which I love. And another one that I sort of surprised myself by, because when I did my ranking of all of the eyeshadow palettes I've tried in 2024 from January to July, the Dreamer palette from Unearthly didn't even make it into the top 10. It was like not even close to it being in my top 10 because I have some issues with some of the shimmers in here. However, when I looked at this, I was like, yes, this is like rosy tones with like a pop of purple, cool tones. To me, it's like half rosy tones, half neutrals. So because of like me including the Mercury Retrograde in here, I wanted to put this in this video too. And if I look at this, like it's such a beautiful color story, and I really enjoy the mattes in here. The mattes are incredible, and the shimmers are really pretty once you get them on the eye. I really struggled applying these to my lids. They kind of had fallout as well. So the shimmer quality in here, I'm just not the biggest fan of. And that's why in my overall ranking of 2024 so far, I didn't rank this super high. But if I compare it to all of the rosy tones I have in my makeup collection, I do still think this is a very solid palette. And I understand why a lot of people enjoy this. However, it's just not really my favorite formula. And where would we be without Miss Pat McGrath in a rosy toned ranking? Because Pat McGrath is the queen of the rosy tones at this point. This is Utopian Dream, which was my pick over the Divine Rose 2. I used to own that, gave that away to my neighbors because this one is just so much better for fair skin. It is rosy, peachy, but then it has those pops of color, really pretty. I love the Pat McGrath Mothership formula. I think it's really lovely. And now that I look at it, I think this is actually pretty close to what the Fleur Fantasia and the Risque Rose have to offer that I ranked so much lower. These like softer pinks with this purple give me Fleur Fantasia vibes. Am I the only person who sees that? I just feel that Pat McGrath can be very repetitive in the range that she has, which is why I don't have any more that have been released a little bit more recently. So Utopian Dream is a really good one. It gives me all the rosy tones for Pat McGrath I could possibly want, and I love the Mothership formula. Another really good rosy tone palette, but that is a little bit deep and saturated for my skin tone, is by Sigma. Mine is a little bit dirty because I got purple eyeshadow on it, and there's more like dirtiness here. I don't know how that happened, but it's Sigma New Mod. And Sigma New Mod is, when this was launched, I knew I had to try it, but sadly this is a little bit deep for me. So as beautiful as it is, how rosy as this is, it ends up looking a little bit too dark on my skin. If you have medium skin, maybe olive tone skin, this I think can be really, really pretty. But if you have fair skin like me, this may not be your cup of tea because it is a little bit dark and saturated. But beautiful formula, I cannot fault it for that. And in terms of all the rosy things that my makeup collection has to offer, I definitely think this is one of the best ones. Number 6 then is another Pat McGrath purchase. This is a Ritualistic Rose. This is one of the Blitz Astral Quad that she did one year for Christmas, and it was like only special shades. And this in my brain is just a warm toned rosy palette. Really pretty. It has that really beautiful sheen to it. And it's been one of my favorite Pat McGrath palettes in my entire makeup collection for the longest time. And I definitely think this is a beautiful, beautiful palette. I really enjoy the formula of this, and it just goes on very smoothly every time. And that brings me to the top 5. The top 5 favorite rosy mauve toned eyeshadow palettes. We have my Natasha Denona Retro. Now mine, of course, has been rearranged. In case you didn't know, I filmed it for you just like the ColourPop stuff, so the link will be in the description box down below. Because Natasha Denona Color Stories and me, we don't tend to really go together, but I love the formula. So did I make this more rosy toned? Yes. Yes, 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 double yes. And the original Retro, though, was already one of my favorites from the brand. I really enjoyed it. It had some warm tones in that I wasn't a huge fan of, but all the rosy tones in the original palette I loved. So I still would rank this in the top 10, even with the original Color Story. But what I ended up doing to it... Is this the best rosy tone Color Story you've ever seen? It definitely is one of mine. So I really enjoy this Color Story now that it's been rearranged. I have definitely gone back to these ever since I have rearranged them. And I have loved this Color Story so, so much more than when I had the original palette. So Natasha Denona Retro rearranged, number 5. So if you know anything about my collection, then I do have so many ColourPop palettes. But I also have some that aren't rearranged. And naturally, those are going to be better than the other ones, because if I don't feel the need to rearrange palettes, if I can, then that usually makes it number 1 very easily. So here we have the Pretty Please palette, and this is a cooler toned rosy row, then warmer tone, and then we just have these neutrals. This is really pretty. Could I have put this with my neutral tone palettes as well? I think I could have. However, I already have so many in that video that I was like, this one needs to go in here, because essentially it has a lot of like pinky rose tones in. Really, really pretty, great formula. You get super shocks in here, sequins, mattes, and metallics. So a really nice range of textures as well. And I really enjoy this. And this was recommended by my lovely subscribers that I should try it. Then we have number 3. This is Romand. This is the Better Than palette in Dreamy Lilac Garden. I always mess up the names of these. This has 3 shimmers in, which I love. So these are the 3 shimmers. It also has the saturation going from light to dark. So it's a really beautiful gradient. And this just has everything that I wanted the like Peony Nude Garden to have. This has a slightly cooler undertone. It's not as warm toned, but it has some really nice neutrals in. It is that wash of color that I appreciate so much about K-Beauty. And as I've already mentioned several times, I really enjoy the Romand formula. So if you want that wash of color K-Beauty vibe, then the Romand Better Than palettes are some of my favorites. Number 2, and I think this was number 1 last time, if I'm not mistaken, but here is my She's in Parties. from Melt Cosmetics. This is again quite deep if you have fair skin like me. I do like that ever since we got this as a stack, they have added these two light shades. That's what makes this palette work for me. Those two shades, but this is beautiful. I think it doesn't get any better when it comes to like a rosy mauve tone palette than it does for anyone else. So Melt, She's in Parties, still really good. Not sure they still do it though. And finally, I was like, should this go into the rosy toned eyeshadow palette video, or should it go into the colorful eyeshadow palette ranking video? But I was like, no, because this I feel is very rose tone, and then this is quite pinky, and then of course you do get those brighter pops of purple, but I put the Mercury retrograde in this video. Of course this can go here too. So here is the Viseart Violette Étendue, which is my #1 favorite rosy, pinky, purple sort of heaven of a palette. It has the formula I love, it has the different undertones I like, and it has the different textures that I love. So Viseart is again coming out on top, which I don't think is any surprise to anyone. I think a lot of my Viseart palettes will end up in the top 10s of some of my rankings for sure. So yeah, Violette Étendue is really lovely. But ask me again tomorrow, and then this ranking could look a little bit differently. I definitely feel that's the way with a lot of rankings. It's just in good fun that I do this. So especially if you feel like, oh, why did you rank this higher or lower? This means nothing about how I feel, whether I should get rid of things or anything like that. Just because something is ranked in the bottom half of this video doesn't mean I want to get rid of it because it's bad shadow. It isn't. I enjoy all of these things, else I wouldn't have bought them. And I was interested in trying them for the channel. So that's where I'm coming from with this video. I will have some links in the description box down below in case you want to shop any of these, if they are still available. I will try to have some affiliate links in the description box. Please be mindful if you click those links and you shop through them, that I could make a small commission. So thank you so very much for being here. I have more eyeshadow palette rankings coming your way, and we're currently doing daily videos for eyeshadow palette month. Thumbs up this video and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for when I post new videos, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye.